experience as I've been going through different churches. There's been various things that I've been talking about in terms of having a missional movement. And one of the things that, just to start from ground zero, not talking about global ministries per se and all the different things that our workers are doing, but one of the things from ground zero has been to say that the way we become missional is very closely related to each one's personal, individual Christian life, so that there was this common ground. And so I've been taking them through 3 basic steps, and I call it CPR. It doesn't quite go in that perfect order, but the first thing is that we have a common experience of Christ, or an encounter with Christ. Or we're ruined by an experience of Christ. You hear people, young people say sometimes when they've done some sort of ministry, they say that wrecked my life. You hear that with the 24/7 prayer movement. And they say, Jesus hijacked my life. He ruined things for the ordinary. And I don't want to go back. They say it in a positive way because now there's some new gaze. And that is the first step of any true missional church. It really isn't being convinced of anything else. The first thing for us is that we have a genuine, true relationship with God where it has impacted us. There's a personal connection between us and Jesus. T.S. Eliot, famous poet, his conversion experience he relates through a Christmas poem called The Gift of the Magi. Or no, not The Gift of the Magi, but the Magi, Journey of the Magi. And it just talks about the Magi looking back after having visited Christ and having come back. And he's still wealthy, he's still wise, he's still served frozen sherbet by silken girls, he says. But now life seems totally ordinary. After having met Christ, after having seen what God had led them to see, nothing compares. He's ruined. And I just think that's, when you have that experience with someone, you immediately have a strong bond with them. And whether it's with your international worker, it's with a pastor, it's with a fellow Christian at church, you both know what that means. Now Christ has ruined me for the ordinary. What now? The second step of becoming missional is, to me, it's illustrated by the Road to Emmaus passage in Luke 24. In that passage, you have 2 people who have an understanding of Christ and even a willingness to pursue Him, but they just walk with their heads hanging because they don't understand the full plan. So there's an experience of Christ, but there's this depressing walk away from the cross, thinking things are over. And Jesus himself appears into this story. He really did walk with these guys, kept himself disguised, and humors them by saying, well, tell me what happened. And they give their rendition of the events. Well, Jesus knows exactly. He's asked him what happened, and he was actually the only guy who actually knew what happened. And he starts saying to them, you guys, how foolish you are. You didn't understand. And he starts doing this thing that I think we do as pastors and leaders within a church. And anyone who teaches, whether it's a small group, children's ministry, anyone who has a role of teaching, they do this. And they need to do this. And this is where I feel churches are really like greenhouses. They show God's unfolding plan. We don't teach the Bible like this is a series of rights and wrongs. It is that, but those things flow out of this big unfolding plan. God's actually redeeming the world that was lost. That's what the Bible is about, the story of Him rescuing people. And so that second level of becoming missional from an encounter with Christ is like this, what Jesus does with the disciples on the road to Emmaus. He says, this is the unfolding plan. And he starts from way back in the prophets, and he walks them through so that by the end of really getting a whole vision of it, they say, we're in our hearts burning within us. And they go from people walking with their heads hung low, and now they're running back to Jerusalem, and they're ready to change the world. And they do. They change the world. So that first step is the encounter with Christ. The second step is that there's an education. Now, it's an education with the relationship with God, but it's an education. What is the Bible overall? What is the whole story? And where do I fit in that story? That is the grand privilege of being in the church. And it's the grand privilege of being, just period, a disciple of Jesus. Because you share this story. You are Acts 29. You are the continuation of the journey that started then. But then the last thing that's kind of the real adventure that leads us into this missional world thing is being provoked by the Spirit. So first, we are ruined by an encounter with Christ. The second thing is we're captivated by God's unfolding plan. The third thing is we're provoked by the Holy Spirit towards some sort of specific goal, some specific action that's totally unique to us, in our community, and our gifts as an individual. The Spirit comes. And this happens over and over in the book of Acts. Something really particular and unique happens to Philip. Something unique happens to Peter. Something unique happens to a non-Christian Italian soldier. And that's what God does. He does these really unique and particular things. So the people who are part of God's unfolding plan, who have a relationship with Him, are now said, and this is it. This is your part. This is how I redeem the world. Through you, going across the street, through you doing something with that housing project next to your church, through you feeding the hungry, through you saying, I will go to that place, I will learn that language, I will live there, and I will forego the excellent life I could have here. And the church also saying, as a response to the Spirit, we choose to forego a good life here that's just for ourselves, and say we will take major portions of what would have been ours, and we will send and support and pray this person through their whole journey, wherever God has called them, because we agree and we affirm this is the Spirit of God. Just as much as if it was one of the 10 Commandments. This is the Holy Spirit has now moved in our lives. So the one that there's the record of it all in the Scriptures, but now God is saying, asking us to move forward. And so that, to me, that's the basis of a missions heartbeat. And it can happen in any community. And the beautiful thing is it's totally and entirely universal. There's not a culture that this does not happen in. And so I love taking communion in a church where I don't understand the language. I don't understand that I don't even know what I'm eating when I get to fellowship with my brothers and sisters in some other cultures. And yet, we tell these stories together. We talk about our being ruined by Christ. We talk about God's unfolding plan and our place in it. And we even share that yesterday and last week and last month, God called us to this specific action. For me, that's where the vibe of the Alliance gets shared, and that's where we find common ground. And we start building partnerships and friendships to reach people around the world and locally. There's no contradiction in my books.